This is Project Next, episode 2 of Plots and Politics with Karen Strait, and I am Sarah Blessing, but this is Karen's show, Take It Girl.
Hey everybody. Yes, this is episode 2 of Plots and Politics. We are super excited today. We are going to be taking the show in a little different direction. It's still going to be bringing some of the same flavor that y'all like, but we're going to dive in a different direction. So I am going to take you today on a journey through the life, the death, and the shenanigans of Kentucky's shortest serving governor. His name is William Goebel. And even though this happened over 100 years ago, I am also going to tell you how it relates to today and today's politics and any lessons that we could possibly learn from it, if there are any. And I want to say I was struggling a bit. So William Goebel is spelled Goebel. And because it's a German name, I am saying Goebel because I believe that is correct. If I am wrong, somebody will tell me and then we'll correct it from there. But I think because it's German, it is Goebel. So we'll go from there.
So I don't know this story. You gave me the notes, Karen, and I didn't read the details because I thought if you explained it and I got confused, I could stop and ask questions to make sure you keep us regular people, figuring out with your smart brain. So I thought I would let you know if I'm like, wait, I'm confused. This story sounds extremely entertaining, wild. It's true. And I think we can learn about it through today's politics because we're kind of in a new world with internet and 24-hour news, and we see campaigns pumping out things to make mass amounts of people believe a certain thing. So we're kind of in the wild west of government being influenced by what's happening online, and I feel like we might be able to learn something from this lesson.
I think we can. And this happened right to the south of us in Kentucky. Very, Indiana and Kentucky have very similar politics, very similar histories. We've diverged a little bit in the last several years as Kentucky now has a Democratic governor, but they still have a Republican majority in their state legislature in the General Assembly of Kentucky. And there's a lot of this story that takes place in the General Assembly of Kentucky. So if you're ready, Sarah, we can dive on into it.
You might want to just get off your TikTok because the stream is bad on your face. Like it's all blotchy.
Is it all blotchy?
It's all blotchy. And it's also delayed.
I don't know why. My internet is usually really good. Do you want me to go out and come back in?
Yeah.
Let me do that. Okay.
Oh, I can remove you and put you back in. Hey, sorry, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. So we are live now on multiple places. We are live on Instagram, but you cannot comment on the show live. And then the other places you can comment. We are live on Project Next Facebook, Sarah Blessing Project Next Facebook, Project Next Movement on YouTube, and Project Next Movement on Twitch. We are now on Twitch. If you are watching us from Twitch, would you please say something in the comments? So all 4 of those places, YouTube and
let me see.
YouTube and Facebook and Twitch are all 3 of those places you can comment. All right, that is 100% better.
Is that better?
We should have done that the first time before we started. Now we know to do that. Okay.
No, that's all good. Okay, and
great.
I'm going to I just re-downloaded my PDF of my notes.
Sweet.
Because I want to make sure.
I can't wait to hear about this. It sounds really interesting. So I didn't know so this governor's not great? Not a great person?
Well, I would say that is up to interpretation. And maybe we can say at the end if they are a great person or not. Okay, so for all of you on TikTok, I'm going to go ahead and stay here on TikTok. It looks like we fixed our connectivity issues on the other end. But if you're here and you like me, or even if you don't like me, I don't care how you feel about me, but if you could go to Project Next Media on YouTube and subscribe.
Project Next Movement.
Sorry, Sarah.
It's okay.
Project Next Movement on YouTube. If
One
you could
word.
go there and subscribe, that would be wonderful. It's all one word, Project Next Movement on YouTube. We are also live on Facebook right now, Sarah Blessing Project Next. So
Yes.
thank you all so much for being here. Now, we are traveling back in time, Sarah. We are going back to 1856.
Okay.
William Goebel was born in 1856. He was born to German parents. They were German immigrants who came over from Hanover, Germany, which is why I'm saying Goebel, and I hope I'm right with that last name. He went to Hollingsworth Business College, and then he studied as an apprentice at a law firm. Because back in the day, you really did not have to get a law degree. You could just go to college and then go be an apprentice in a law firm, which is kind of interesting. And that's what he did. The person that ran the law firm was also a Kentucky governor named John Stevenson. And William Goebel and John Stevenson really got along very well. They had very, very similar politics. They were both populists. So they were for labor, they were for people, they were against corporations. Excuse me. William was described sometimes favorably, sometimes not so favorably. He was described as somebody who was intellectual. He was a populist. He did advocate for the people. He was not super likable. He was not a real likable guy, and he wasn't very charismatic. He was not a politician who was a great orator, who could really get out there and give an amazing speech. He briefly had a relationship with a woman. She's not really mentioned anywhere, but he never married. He never settled down, no children. He's also the only governor in Kentucky history to never be married. Kind of interesting. So that was kind of his personal life.
So just like listening to this for the first time, he sounds like a person who has good ideas, but not great social skills. Like he didn't have the charisma that sometimes really helps a politician. Seems like he might be lacking that. But I like his ideas of being populist and not supporting corporations and being more for the people and like union labor person. I like that. Yeah,
same. And I think, based on some of the other descriptions, because there are, and I will make sure that we put the sources that I've used in the notes of this show, both like on Facebook and it's also a podcast now. Everybody can listen.
Sorry, Project Next Media. Sorry, it's either media or movement.
It depends. So Project Next Media, if you want to find us on your Apple Podcast, Spotify, etc. But there, of course, I used Wikipedia to kind of point me in the direction. And then there were 3 different books because this guy is pretty interesting. So people have written biographies on him throughout the years. And so there are different sources. And the way he was described, honestly, probably sounds like somebody we would say is on the spectrum today.
Right.
Very, very smart, just no social skills, no really public presence. But what he is able to do behind the scenes, pretty impressive. So, and I'm not saying impressive in a good or bad way, just
impressive in the impact it had on society.
You did it, Bill. I don't know if he went by Bill. I feel like I could call him Bill.
Sure,
maybe we'd be friends. So he was known for advocating for populist causes. That is how he got a lot of political support. He was very against the railroads. And you have to think back to so this is the 1880s now when he is in college, when he is an apprentice. The railroads are huge. And as somebody who's worked in the government, I'm sure you have experience with this as well, Sarah. If you've ever tried to deal with the railroads, they are a freaking sovereign nation. I am not kidding. Most of our railroads in the US predate our states and our cities being incorporated. So the laws that govern the railroad predate a lot of our municipal and state laws. So they have like free reign to pretty much do whatever they want. It's really interesting. I mean, something as simple as getting a railroad crossing repaired is so many layers of bureaucracy because as a city or a county, you're not allowed to pave that railroad crossing. And that was such a frustration in a town like Elkhart up here in the Chicago area, we are just railroad tracks everywhere. It's a huge frustration. So back in the 1880s, William recognized some of the same stuff that we are recognizing now in the 2020s, that the railroads have a lot of freaking power.
Huh.
He got a lot of support by going against the railroad and advocating for regulations at a state level and at a federal level to kind of rein in the railroads because they had so much authority and so much power. That's how he got a little name recognition. And that led him to run for a vacant seat in the Kentucky State Senate in 1887. And he won this race by only 56 votes.
Oh, wow.
So as much as we talk about, right, Sarah, you just ran a campaign. As much as we talk about every freaking vote counts, we're not lying. We're not making it up. Every vote counts. And it was really just because he was young. So if I'm doing the math here, 56, 8, so he was 31 at this point.
And this is just men getting to vote. Is it men with property? I wonder what the rules were to voting back then.
I am sure this was just men with property back then. That is my guess. But this was barely post-Civil War. So we're looking at a couple of decades post-Civil War. So there still is a lot of upheaval, especially in Confederate states like Kentucky. I don't know if this was around the 3/5 compromise.
Right.
Or
interesting.
Folks who had if they were able to vote. I don't know. I should look into that though. Maybe we could do a little follow-up.
Because just like who had the power is so important to know. That voting power.
Yep.
And if you think about back then, how few people got to vote, they really had power.
They sure did. Like that vote carried so much weight.
Yeah.
So William Goebel in 1887 has ascended to his very first political elected position.
And he's a state senator.
Is a state senator in 1887. So 31 years old, William Goebel is on the scene as a state senator in Kentucky. He continued to be super, super popular. He was definitely known as a deal maker. He was a broker guy. He was a behind the scenes. And I think of the Hamilton song, if anybody is a musical person, The Room Where It Happened, right? I want to be in the room where it happened. Everything of William's life sounds like he's just in the room where stuff is always happening because he's making it happen. And all of this did gain him a lot of support. He followed along with his mentor, Stevenson, former Governor Stevenson's model of going after corporations. They both believed that corporations should be in the hands of the people, not in the hands of the wealthy few. He was a Democrat because Kentucky was predominantly Democrats at the time, but he was so closely aligned with the Labor Party in the 1800s that he did get a lot of labor votes. So even people who were Labor Party members would go vote Democrat because they liked William Goebel so much and they liked what he stood for. All of this is pretty run-of-the-mill state politics kind of stuff. They're passing laws. He gets a law in the books that goes after the railroads. That kind of forces them to deregulate a little bit in Kentucky. All of this is pretty run of the mill until 1895. So he's kind of doing his thing from 1897 to 1895. He gets into a little bit of a kerfuffle with a guy named John Lawrence Sanford. John Lawrence Sanford was a former Confederate staff officer. And he was also kind of a wealthy dude. He owned a lot of toll exchanges in Kentucky. So turnpikes and toll exchanges with goods passing back and forth, you would have to pay a toll. Because Goebbels didn't like that kind of stuff, William Goebel did not like that kind of tax on people who were just trying to move goods. He put forward regulation in the state of Kentucky that repealed a lot of those tolls. So it cost John Lawrence Sanford a ton of money, and that kind of started their feud together.
Oh.
They go back and forth kind of in public spaces, and it kind of comes to a head. This may be one of the favorite things that I've ever had to type. It kind of comes to a head when William Goebel publishes an op-ed in the local paper entitled Gonorrhea John.
Oh my gosh, it's like today. We're same stuff.
Best thing, where he accuses John of having some diseases, of being a bad businessman, a bad person, lacking moral character. So shortly after this article comes out, both men meet each other on the street. William Goebel is going to a bank. John Sanford is coming out of a bank. William Goebel is walking with a couple of dudes, and as soon as these men approach John Sanford reaches out his left hand, which if anybody knows the custom of why we shake with our right hands, it's because most people are right-handed, and that's where we would hold a weapon if we had one. So John Sanford sticks out his left hand, and William Goebel immediately knows that means he's got a gun in his right hand.
Wow.
And as soon as this happens, both men draw their guns because, of course, William Goebel has a gun too. It's freaking Kentucky. Both men draw their guns. This is on the street in the middle of the day in Kentucky in front of a bank.
Wow.
So many people saw this, and nobody really knows who fired first. It's likely that both of them fired at the same time. John Sanford's bullet just goes through William Goebel's coat. It does not hit him at all. Goebbels' bullet, on the other hand, hits Sanford in the head.
Oh, wow.
And John Sanford dies a few hours later.
Wow.
Which even, let's think about this. 1895 Kentucky, you get shot in the head and you live for like 6 hours. Can you imagine?
That sounds terrible.
It sounds awful. Like, what an agonizing, and I would hope, because, I'm not a doctor. I don't know if anybody knows that I'm not a doctor, but I know when certain injuries happen to the brain, there's not a ton of pain. So I would hope it's like,
hopefully his body took over and you couldn't feel it.
Couldn't feel it because my goodness, because obviously that's an injury that we should, we probably surgery, we'd be able to help the guy. If you live for 6 hours after getting shot in the head, we probably could save you today.
Or maybe he'd be in a coma.
Yes. Oh, but gosh. Yeah. So he lived for 6 hours. Goebel was acquitted of this on the grounds of self-defense.
Right.
And this was a really big deal in Kentucky because while you could claim self-defense if you kill somebody, you were not able to claim self-defense in a duel because duels were illegal.
Right.
It's actually written that a duel is illegal.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of gray area there about whether or not this was a duel because the setup of a duel, tends to take some kind of ceremony and you're like counting and you're walking with each other. You're doing 10 paces or whatever. But this didn't really seem like a duel. This was just a boom right away on the street.
But it seemed like they were both aware of each other that this could happen, carrying weapons, left hand thing. It seemed like it was an accidental duel because they were both fearful of each other.
They were, and they both had their weapon for a reason. And the friends that were with William Goebel that day said, hey man, let's go to a different bank. I think that's where John Sanford banks. Maybe we shouldn't go there. And Goebel was like, well, that's my bank too. Like, we're going. So there was kind of maybe he was egging him on. He did write an article called Gonorrhea John. So, which I think some could argue is like worse than a gunshot because that's like scathing. Could you imagine like picking up your newspaper in 1895 Kentucky and that's the headline of an article?
Wow.
Like the pearl clutching. My goodness. Yeah. So,
it's just like writing it on social media today. Yep.
Could you imagine writing that for your opponent? Like, gonorrhea, whoever.
We see it happening now. So yes, I can't imagine me doing it, but can I see other people doing it? Yes, I can.
And you could pick any number of like venereal disease for alliteration. If it's like Sally, you'd be like syphilis Sally. You could come up with like anything like chlamydia Clark, like whatever you need to do. There's so many diseases.
And also there's nicknames with them too. So yeah, you have a heyday with it.
Have a heyday. Oh my God.
And you can even use your chat GTP to help you think of the best way to do your alliteration,
See,
we have tools to help with this now.
The worlds are coming together, right? And you actually just nailed it, Sarah, on how this whole story, as I keep going on here, it kind of leads me to kind of my overarching hypothesis. And you and I have talked about this before, but like as a people, as a species, as humans, we are exactly the same that we have been for hundreds of years.
Yes.
Thousands of years.
We always think we've evolved so much. And then you start telling a story and I'm like, oh, we do this now. We do that one now. It just gets magnified more. There's just more people. There's more technology.
Yep, we're the same people
We're
with
the
better
same.
tools,
We're the same.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
just have better
Yep.
tools.
Yep.
So yeah, so somebody could obviously, oh my gosh, somebody in the TikTok chat just said leprosy Larry. That's a good one. That's a good one. See, we can have so much fun with this, right?
Yep.
So we are the same pretty much horrible people that we've always been. We just have way better technology.
Yeah.
So William Goebel got a lot more name recognition for this. He actually went on to win re-election, I believe 2 or 3 more times to the Kentucky State Senate, and he won by very big margins. So his first election, he only won by 56 votes.
Right.
But he got so popular because of his regulation of the railroad and because of this duel that he.
Sorry, I just got you out. Repeat that sentence again. I have no idea what happened, but I'm so sorry. I think.
Oh, weird. No, that's okay. No, so he just got a lot of name recognition. He was super, super popular, and he went on to win re-election to the Kentucky State Senate a few more times by really big margins. So he only won by 56 votes the first time. He was winning by way bigger vote margins going forward because not only was he a populist that was well liked, he also won a duel. And that's kind of cool.
Oh, that kind of mirrors our stuff too with the gunshot ear thing and the fist pumping picture. Yeah. We got that too. Like, wow, how badass. Yeah.
How many parallels are we pulling into this, right?
Oh, yeah.
So all of this is leading up to the Democratic Party convention in 1899 in Kentucky to nominate their candidate for governor. In the last term, right before this 1899 conference, William Goebel did something you can argue was brilliant, diabolical, or maybe both.
Right. Okay.
In the state Senate, William Goebel passes something, introduces it, and passes something called the Goebel election law. Ooh. He named it after himself.
Boy, that mirrors some people today.
Right? The audacity of this dude. Goebel election law, it passed strictly along party lines. So only Democrats voted for it, but Democrats had a majority in the Kentucky legislature. So they were even able to override the governor's veto because it went to the governor's desk and he was like, no, William, I am not signing a law that has your name on it. Like, absolutely not. It goes back to the legislature. They override the veto and Goebel election law becomes law in the state of Kentucky. What this allowed Goebel to do was appoint members to a state election commission that would control all of the county election commissions. So up until this point, each county was responsible for their own electors, their own delegates, kind of like we have now. But this established a state commission that never existed before. And of course, this state commission, the way the law was written, there were no party requirements. It was not, it has to be ex-Republicans, ex-Democrats.
Oh, wow.
No, it was a 3-person commission, and William Goebel appointed 3 Democrats to this commission.
So this sounds bad to me.
Uh-huh.
This sounds really bad. It sounds like a power play. It sounds like a great way for him to get more power and then for other people that he likes to take over, for them to be in power. You would want equal of both sides in something to be bipartisan to keep checks and balances. So this is a big alarm bell to me.
Right.
I've liked some of the things he's done up until this point, but that sounds like he's getting a little bit power hungry here.
Uh-huh. And so he's got a little bit of hubris now, because I'm sorry, to name the law after yourself, like just that on its face. And somebody in the TikTok chat just said, just like Minnesota now. Yeah, there are very, very similar systems in place still to this day in our state legislatures, where electors and commissions, and it varies from state to state, but where they are appointed by the governor. So all of this made him very, very popular with Democrats, very, very unpopular with Republicans.
Well, that sounds similar to stuff that happens today. Very polarizing
Very
polarizing Dem
polarizing.
Republican things. Yeah.
Yep. So that is all of the groundwork that has been laid leading up to the 1899 Democratic State Convention in Kentucky, where they are making their appointments for who's going to be their candidate for governor, for Kentucky governor. There were 3 men that were vying to be the Democratic nominee for governor. Goebel was one of them. And I got to find the other names. So Goebel and a guy named Stone. I didn't write, how did I not write down the other guy's name? Anyway, it doesn't matter. There were 3 guys. Goebel convinces Stone to form an alliance with him. And he promises Stone, if you form an alliance with me and we get rid of this other guy, because the 3rd guy was actually the front runner for the nomination.
Okay.
Let's form an alliance. Let's pool our votes. And we're going to get rid of this top guy. As soon as we get rid of this top guy, William Goebel, I'm going to drop out of the race. You can have it. It works. The alliance works. The top guy drops out.
Wow.
All the votes are pooled. Goebel goes back on his word, pretty much stabs Stone in the back.
Wow.
And steals the nomination from him after all of that.
Yeah. Power hungry things seem to be coming true for my opinion here. Yeah.
Yep. And because Goebel had so much more name recognition with the electors, with the delegates at the state convention, because of his populist stances, that's really how he was able to secure the nomination. And he kind of knew that going in. Stone didn't really know that, so he bamboozled him, right? He hoodwinked him. Again, now not only is Goebel making enemies with the Republicans,
now the Dems
in his own
popular, powerful Democrats in the state of Kentucky are now enemies with this guy. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. And so some people really respected it. They respected his hustle, I guess you could say. Other people were like, nah, dude, that is dirty. That is dirty, dirty, dirty. I don't like that. So the general election comes along. William Goebel loses by over 2,300 votes to his Republican challenger, Taylor. I believe it was.
I wonder how many Dems switched party lines and voted for the Republican
and like flipped him off and we're just like, no, we're done with you.
Right.
But remember, Goebel's got the ace card because he has Goebel election law in place. What? He has the state election commission in place. So 2,300 votes, by the way, is nowhere near a recount mandate.
No, right? Especially back then with how few people could vote in Kentucky.
That was a solid victory.
Definitely.
There really was no question William Goebel lost.
The other guy won. Yeah.
But William Goebel got the Democratic members of the state election commission that he appointed to start questioning the results of the election. So this starts seeding doubt. All of this keeps moving forward after the election, and eventually it goes to the legislature of Kentucky. The state election commission says, we have found all of these problems in all of these counties with these votes. We have to look into it. This election could have been a fraud. There really was no question that this was not a fraud. William Goebel just wanted to win. It goes into the General Assembly of Kentucky, and magically, over 2,300 Republican votes were invalidated. And William Goebel was declared by the state election commission that he created with Goebel election law. He was declared the governor of Kentucky.
Wow. Okay. I'm imagining there's some sort of reporting in newspapers going on about this. There has to be people upset.
Yes. People were pissed.
Okay. This makes sense. Yes. So people in Kentucky are pissed off. The Republicans are mad. The Democrats that don't like him are mad.
Yep.
Even if like you're an intelligent person and you voted for this guy, you would probably be mad because it's not democracy.
Exactly. It's not democracy.
Right.
And it's happening behind the scenes, right? That room where it happened thing. All of this is going on in the state legislature, which of course is a public body and anybody can walk in and watch the proceedings, but it's not live streaming like it is today. Like you got to get in your freaking horse and wagon and take a day trip to go to Louisville.
Right.
Louisville was the capital at the time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Of Kentucky. So yeah, and which is on the eastern part of the state, so it's not centrally located.
No.
Like, was it Frankfort now?
Yeah.
Frankfort, Kentucky. So Frankfort's more centrally located. So the number of people who are even able to show up at the General Assembly and view what's happening, a very small amount of people. So you do have a handful of reporters that are covering it. And there's people in the TikTok chat right now that are like, gosh, this sounds familiar. Seems like what is happening now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're the same people.
Yep.
So
same crap.
Republicans were obviously irate. And this news traveled across the state, and militias started forming in the state of Kentucky. So you have, again, this is 25 years, 35 years after the end of the Civil War. So those Civil War people are still around. 30 years is not that long. I mean, that's more recent. I mean, that's as recent as like Vietnam veterans now. These people are ready to fight. They've all got their weapons. They are all militias. So there are Republican and Democratic militias swelling up around the state. William Goebel is still preparing to take the oath and be sworn in as governor. On the morning of January 31st, 1900,
wow.
1900, 5 or 6 shots rang out on the square of the old Capitol building in Louisville.
Wow.
William Goebel was hit in the chest. Nobody knows to this day who fired those shots.
Wow.
Nobody knows. But he was hit in the chest. They thought they could save his life. He had 19 doctors working on him for days. The night after he was shot, on what would become his deathbed, he took the oath.
That shows some ego there.
He's like, yeah, I know I'm dying, but damn it, I've worked really hard to be the governor. I'm going to be the governor.
I mean, I've rigged this election. I'm gonna be governor.
Yep. So he was sworn in the night after he was shot. He lived for 3 more days. So he was the governor of Kentucky for about 3.5 days. Surprisingly, not the shortest serving governor. There's actually a governor of Florida, and I believe another one of Texas, who only lived for 1 day.
That's why we put Kentucky shortest in the comments there.
Kentucky shortest, right? But those governors that only lived a day, I want to dive into their deaths, because I'm like, did you have pneumonia or something? Because they just dropped dead. They were not assassinated, as far as we know, because
for rigging the election.
Yeah, because William Goebel, Kentucky governor for 4 days in the year 1900, is the only governor in U.S. history who was ever assassinated, sitting governor, which I think is pretty fascinating. You would think there were more, right? No,
Corinne, good job for finding this story.
Oh, girl, I'm not done.
This is crazy.
I know. There's a little more. So this, of course, goes back to William Goebel's Republican challenger.
Okay.
Governor Taylor, the Republican who technically won the election and then had it stolen from him by William Goebel. Taylor and a couple of other guys go on trial several times for this assassination. Only one person was ever convicted. So there were a total of like 17 trials.
Wow.
For 4 different people, because they just kept retrying them over and over and over again, because everybody was so mad. And even the people who were mad at William Goebel for all the dirty stuff that he did, they really wanted justice served for his death. So, one person was eventually convicted, but all of their sentences were overturned and everybody was pardoned in 1908. So this went on from 1900 to 1908. The person who was convicted went to prison in like 1907. Then they were all pardoned in 1908. Even going forward, this tomfoolery that happened in the Kentucky General Assembly with the vote retraction that they took away over 2,300 Republican votes, that decision was upheld as legal by the Kentucky Court of Appeals. They said, nope, completely legal. You did it. And then that decision makes it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court declined to hear the case. So the Kentucky Appeals Court decision stands, because even the people who were still pissed at Goebel after he died, wanted his election to be invalidated. So they kept working through the court. So they would have posthumously revoked him as the governor of Kentucky. But because the court decision stood, William Goebel was the shortest serving governor in Kentucky history. His election stood, and nobody was really ever held accountable for his death.
So the Republican guy did become the governor? Is that what you said? Who was the governor after him?
I don't know. I don't know
if it was a Democrat or a Republican.
I don't know. I think there was a special election, maybe, or they appointed somebody, because I believe at this time the Supreme Court or whatever of the state or the state Senate could still appoint a replacement, because there wasn't really like lieutenant governors, so there wasn't like a succession plan in place. So most likely his replacement, a replacement was chosen for him. So that is the freaking crazy story of William Goebel, the only U.S. governor to ever be assassinated. And although, of course, he did not pull the trigger that fired the bullet that ended his life, but he certainly, over a period of close to 15 years, laid the groundwork for this kind of assassination plot to eventually be launched against him.
And so the law stayed that you could have this bad committee and then these things could continue to happen. Is it still law now?
I don't know. I should look into that and see.
Yeah, if anybody knows any of this stuff, tell us. Like the TikTok people, any TikTok people want to research this?
I know.
This is interesting, because I don't know. I want to know what happened with Kentucky after it. Do you want to talk about how this mirrors society today?
Yes. Well, I will say there definitely still is a state election commission in Kentucky, because every state has one. But I bet that it is not just 3 Democratic members anymore.
Right.
So I would imagine that
makes
global
sense.
election law,
right.
It has been overridden at some point over the last 125 years.
Because thankfully, I haven't heard any stories in my lifetime of election fraud happening in Kentucky. So
I have not either. But you said the word fraud there, and that's kind of where I wanted to pull it back to today. We just went through this in our last election, right? There were lots of questions on the national stage. We had a lot of questions, particularly in one state district here in Indiana, where one county was running their election really well, and the other county looked like they made a lot of mistakes. And what we've had some conversations about and have shared about in some of our content is the idea of election fraud. Somebody purposefully, fraudulently influencing an election is incredibly rare. Even according to the Heritage Foundation, which if anybody's familiar with the Heritage Foundation, they are a very, very conservative public action group. Mm-hmm. Even according to them, there's only about 3,000 confirmed cases of voter fraud since 1980. So in 40 years,
that's when I was born. So 44 years.
So 3,000 cases confirmed. You would hardly even be able to influence a county election with that.
Now, if you listened to right-wing media, especially during the last few elections with Trump, you would think that this was a massive problem. But you're saying there's only been 3,000 confirmed cases. And so it's not. So fraud is not our election problems. Now, we live in the state of Indiana, and it's very hard to vote in Indiana. We have voter suppression.
Yep.
We also have voter confusion, and we have people that work in county election clerk's office, a county clerk's office in each county, could not be good at their job. So we have other types of election problems. I just want to talk about Tiffany Stoner's race really fast. Is that okay with you?
Of course.
So Tiffany Stoner, what state house race was she in? What area?
She's District 25, so which is it's on the northwest-ish side of Indianapolis. So this is Brownsburg areas, a little bit of Zionsville in Boone and Hendricks County.
And she lost by just a few votes this past November. She was the Democrat candidate and she barely lost. It was something like 60 votes or something. And then when they looked into it, one county, do you remember which county it was? I don't remember. Hendricks County did a very bad job of counting people's votes. They were the way we do our elections with signatures and things and absentee ballots and military ballots. There were a lot of errors with that clerk, with them not counting people's votes. And if they would have counted them, she might have won. So it's not voter fraud. It's problems in the system of how we run our elections in the state of Indiana. And I would love to see bills being passed to make elections more fair. If I were one of those people in Hendricks County and I voted absentee ballot or I voted by the military, what are they called? It's called a certain ballot. The mail-in ballots. And I found out my vote might not have counted, I would be pretty upset. And if I were you in Hendricks County, I would be calling the clerk's office and asking, what are you doing to ensure that in 2 years in our next election, this is not going to happen again? Because these people for state house run every 2 years. And I think the person that gets the most votes should win, regardless whether that's the person I want to win or not. So we have a different type of problem, thankfully. I was watching Narcos. Do you ever watch Narcos? Narcos Mexico covered, that's on Netflix. Yeah, they covered a true story of like the president of Mexico, it being completely fraud. It was like new voting machines and they had the people that were in charge of the machines and who were counting they had a whole plan and they were able to make someone president that shouldn't have been. So it does happen around the world, but we're fortunate it doesn't happen in America.
And that's the whole, that's why when we talk about voter fraud, and you're right. If you are listening to more right-leaning media, you're going to think it's a much larger problem than it really is. And that's why I like to cite the Heritage Foundation, because even according to one of the most conservative groups in the country, fraud is not really a problem. So in the 2024 election, there were 107,000 separate voting locations around the country. So that is why fraud is nearly impossible. So just in Indiana, you have 92 different counties. That is 92 separate elections. And that's how we can look at Boone County and Hendricks County right next to each other, having completely different outcomes and completely different election processes. Somebody in the TikTok chat right now just said same thing in our county in Michigan. The clerk was fine, but there was an electronic mistake. So that's where when we look at the influence of elections, it is generally happening by incompetence, genuine human error, or what William Goebel did, laying the groundwork for a specific outcome years in advance. And we can tie that back to Elon Musk purchasing Twitter, which he has been very vocal and very honest. He purchased Twitter to help Trump win the election, to pump out the disinformation, to not censor anything on Twitter. And it worked. I mean, Elon Musk took a $20 million loss.
Twitter. Everybody was making fun of him. Like, what a terrible financial decision.
It's about to be a really good financial decision for him because he's going to help run the friggin' country.
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of decisions when we talk about fraud, it really distracts us from the actual issues that we have in influencing the outcome of elections.
Right.
Like voter suppression, shenanigans at your state legislature, at your county party, like William Goebel did. He knew, I'm going to get this law passed, and in 3 years, it's going to help me become governor, or it's going to help the person I want to become governor.
Right.
Because he really didn't seem to care if it was him. He just wanted a say in the matter.
So I have a lot of things that concern me with being in 2025. and with social media and with elections. And you and I covered it really well, I think, in the It Ends With Us episode with the
Yeah.
Blake Lively stuff, where we see how easy it is for people to be manipulated. None of us want to think we can, but when we're shown a story where like a PR company or Elon Musk buying one major social media platform, when we see a designated attack and plan and money put into messaging dumped out all across social media platforms and news sources, we see it working. People
Yep.
are reading it. When human beings read something multiple times, they just think it's true. Well, I've seen it in 6 different places in the past 2 days. It must be true. So
Mm-hmm.
like the PR company for the actress Blake Lively, they dumped out a bunch of negative messages of her and everybody was seeing it.
Yeah.
Whether they watched the movie or knew about this book or knew what was going on with her, because it was a calculated attack with money and a PR group. And now we're seeing a counterattack because it was Blake Lively and she does have power and money. Um, we are being played with.
Yeah.
Our opinions are being played with. They are trying to manipulate us. And I think if we all collectively work together and talk to our neighbors and friends when somebody's just chatting on the phone, did you see this stuff about Blake Lively? Or did you see this stuff about our election fraud? We can just kind of say, let's look into that. I wonder if it's a story meant to manipulate us, or I wonder if it's truth.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't always have time for that. So I get why we're in the place that we are in.
And there are so many, you'll see somebody on like TikTok or Instagram who purchases something and they'll say like, oh, I've been influenced. Like I was definitely influenced to buy these pants or this lotion or whatever. We do want to think that we are above the marketing and above the advertising, but there's a reason people spend so much money and corporations spend so much money on advertising, because it works. Those messages work. And what we are dealing with in places like Indiana and even Kentucky, Ohio, Missouri, Georgia, more red-leaning states, is a very deliberate effort to influence our election outcomes potentially for generations. And as I was reading the William Goebel story, I just kept thinking of Project Red Map. And Project Red Map was launched by Republicans in 2010. It was a deliberate effort by Republicans, a nationwide effort to target state legislatures, to flip them and make them supermajority red, so district boundaries could be drawn that would benefit the Republican Party for years to come. And what we saw is this national effort for this group to kind of descend on state legislative races. And they put a lot of money into primarying out more moderate Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
And see this replicated all around the country. They deliberately went after, and they knew, we're starting this in 2010. Maybe it's not till 2020 or 2025 or 2030 that we really see it pay off, but we know it's going to pay off, and it has. That is exactly that groundwork that has been laid to go after voters in predominantly red rural areas. They were playing the long game. William Goebel in 1900 and 1895, he was playing the long game. He's laying the groundwork for elections to come. I'm going to set up the infrastructure that I know is going to benefit me, and I'm going to do it so covertly and quietly and expertly that nobody's really going to pay attention until it's too late.
And that mirrors what is happening in Indiana. Exactly. I follow Harrison County politics and government very closely here. And what you just said with Project Red Map is exactly what happened in Harrison County.
Mm-hmm.
And we're 100% Republican led. Nothing against Republicans, but we need two-party rule. It's not good for all Democrats to control something or all Republicans to control something, because then you get the power-hungry people that come in and take over. What can we do? Guys, I don't want you to lose hope. I formed with Tim Peck, Project Next Media, to have hope, to work together. The secret is, regardless of who you voted for on November or whether you voted at all, right now we come together across the country and we work together to shine a light on these things. They sound like conspiracies, but it's fact. We've had this, We've had people working for years and years and years to get control, and it has worked. Now we need to shine a light on it, join forces, vote for better people, shine a light on bad bills and bad laws and get them stopped, do what we can, but don't lose hope. I get down, I get defeated. Don't you in Indiana, Corinne?
Oh, for
Pretty
sure.
intelligent, badass woman over there up in
We're in a
northern
legislative
Indiana.
session right now that is an absolute
It's
shit show.
overwhelming. The number of bad bills in Indiana being written right now, maybe going to committee, maybe not. It's terrifying. And
Mhm.
for me to sleep at night, I do what I can. I get on this platform, I say some of the bills, I talk to people, we have meetings, we are texting each other. Did you see this bill? What about this bill? I heard this bill isn't going anywhere, but this bill is. We work together. I had a call this morning from Sean Bostock, and he was telling me about what he knew with the bills, and that was very helpful. And I said, please continue to let me know which ones do we not need to worry about and which ones do we need to worry about. And he said
Yeah.
it flips so quickly, you know.
Yep.
But we work together. The fact that Sean calls me, the fact that I then let other people know, the
Mhm.
fact that we are having this show right now, we can do this, but it's not going to be, we fixed everything.
Nope.
It's going to take years. We're going to have to play the long game too.
Mhm.
We've got to get over ourselves, our emotions of this person voted wrong. I need to yell at them online. We need to get over that. We need to talk to our neighbors and explain to them what's going on. Because guess what, you all? Most people have no idea what's actually happening. They're being
Mhm.
fed fake things online, or they've turned off online because it's gross and it's upsetting. So we have to teach people in a compassionate way what is happening and help them. What do we do? Because it's scary. My schools are under attack. The public
Yep.
schools here are under attack. I think the public schools just about everywhere in Indiana are under attack. But we've got it really bad with the school board here at North Harrison. Um,
I
instead of
know.
being
It's
defeated, we have to
we have
fight.
to we have to fight, and especially in a place like Indiana, or and this is where we want to be really, really clear, right? We are not asking, and anybody who is a moderate, a Democrat, a progressive, a liberal, anybody who really is very well informed on the left side of things is not particularly interested in completely swinging the pendulum the other direction.
No.
We want conflict in the legislative process. Conflict and compromise are
Yes.
crucial to making good legislation.
Yes.
What we are witnessing in Indiana right now is 95% of the legislature making bills, writing legislation, spending time in committee, using all of their legislative energy to pretty much help themselves and further their own political ambitions. And Indiana is notorious, and this is the same with a lot of other red states as well, notorious for putting forward a lot of national headline grabbing pieces of legislation. We have they want to close public schools and force them into charters. We want to criminalize abortion. They want to change the criminal code to make it homicide to have an abortion. We want to give the Attorney General of Indiana prosecutorial authority to go after every single person in the state who uses abortion pills, who leaves the state to have an abortion. I mean, it's insane. And all of this is just designed to further their political ambitions on a national scale. If these Republicans bend in any way to more moderate or even more democratic ideas, they lose their campaign funding support. So whether or not these Republicans actually give a crap about the legislation they're putting forward, they are only doing it to maintain those donors and maintain that conservative bucket of money, because none of these bills have any data behind them that is helping the people of Indiana. And this is where we get with one party rule. And this is why we want to pull this away from the national soap opera of national politics and start to focus on our local communities. And anytime somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? The first thing we're going to do is, yes, Aaron Parnas did cover that story. And that's the thing, Laura. That's what and I'm going to make a video about this later today, but that's what the Republicans want. They want big creators who are not located in Indiana. They want MSNBC. They want CNN. They want these media companies to be like, oh my God, can you believe what is happening in Indiana? Because they want to frame us as a bunch of backward hillbillies. And they want to be able to say, this is what you voted for. This is what you get.
And they didn't.
They didn't.
They didn't vote for it. The people just blindly voted straight party ticket Republican, thinking those people were fighting for us. When they find out the truth, they are horrified. But most people going in on that election in November in 2024 had no idea they were voting for our public schools to be turned into charter, had no idea they were voting to criminalize getting a life-saving abortion care. When you have a miscarriage, you have to have that medicine to save your life. They have no idea that they're doing that and that it's hurting themselves. They think they're doing the right thing. It is our job as regular citizens of your state. If you're in a state that's all like this, that's similar, it's our job to educate everybody around us about what is going on, about the truth. And it's hard. It's a hard job, but it's important.
It's important. And less than 20%, that's what we always talk about with, we have data on our side. We are not speaking out of our behinds here. We have the data on our side. In a state like Indiana that is conservative, only less than 20% of people in Indiana support our abortion ban. Only less than 20%. And in this legislative session, there are 9 pieces of legislation to restrict and criminalize abortion even further. There is no popular support for any of these bills. They are only designed to get national attention.
And they just want us to be hopeless. They want us in Indiana to be hopeless. There's nothing we can do. And that is not true. Have hope, you all. I know a lot of people, Democrats and a lot of Republicans, fighting for good. I met so many good Republicans when I tried to save North Harrison schools. I met a lot of good Republicans that way. A lot of people are trying to save our schools because it doesn't just hurt Democrats. We need to end up. We need to end here so we can get under an hour. And I just want to thank everybody for coming out.
Yes, and thanks y'all for being here on TikTok.
And then I want to thank my husband. I'm going to play the song here. He wrote this song. It's for his band 1443, and he's letting us use it. He's going to add more to it coming. I want to thank him for that. I think it's awesome. I think it fits Corinne's personality in this show pretty well. I want to thank Scott Aaron Rogers for turning our episodes into podcasts. You can find them anywhere you get your podcasts under Project Next Media. And then if you will please share this episode on wherever you are watching it, please share it. Please send it to a friend. Please subscribe to YouTube. We really need to get more subscribers on there. We're doing great on Facebook. We need the other ones. And then TikTok, let's see what's up with TikTok in a few days if we still have it, huh?
We'll see.
We'll see. Corinne, thanks for doing episode 2 of your show. You're fantastic. I adore you.
Thank you.
Thanks to Tim Peck, co-founder with me at Project Next. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Anything you want to say?
No, that was fun. Come back. We'll do another episode of Platinum.
We'll do another episode soon. Follow up. Comment. What did you think of the show? Put it in the comments. We'll read them. What did you like? What was confusing? Is there anything we could do better? Let us know. Tell us do you have a crazy story about history you know about that maybe Corinne wants to do a deep dive on? Tell us stuff.
Tell me.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
No shortage of material.
We'll see you soon. And thanks, Corinne, for that fascinating story
of course.
Kentucky's shortest serving governor. Bye, everybody.